What's up, guys? Iceman here. Welcome to Chilling Tales. So, what I'm about to tell you is a story that I was hesitant on talking about. I haven't told it on this channel yet, and it's just so disturbing. It's so gruesome, but I'll try to spare you guys some of the details. But nonetheless, it has to get out there. This is a horrendous bear attack that took place in my home state, Michigan. Now, I think it's often assumed in the bear attack forums and so forth, at least those who are new to the stories, that grizzlies are like the most dangerous of them all. And to an extent, that's true. They're the most powerful one, I would say, next to the polar bear. But black bears are severely underlooked, in my opinion. These bears are everywhere. They're throughout Michigan. They're not as large, but they're very opportunistic. And they're often known to eat their human victims alive. They're one of the few bears that commonly do that in a bear attack scenario. If you get attacked by a black bear, you gotta fight back. And fortunately, in this story, that's what this guy did. But it just didn't work out all that well for him. So basically, Brian was a 27-year-old man who was into software engineering. He had his own apartment not far from Manistee National Forest. And I've been there a couple times. It's a beautiful place, but you gotta watch out for the freaking bears. Brian met Alexia at a thrift store, I think is what it was. This chick worked behind the counter, and he was just sort of an outgoing kind of guy. So he got to know her while shopping at the thrift store. They exchanged numbers and they started dating. She was a bit younger than he was. I think she was 19 or 20 years old. But nonetheless, the two were dating for a couple months, and she lived with her parents. To my understanding, she wasn't going to school. He was a software engineer. He had his own apartment, and they decided to embark on an adventure to Manistee National Forest, to go out there and camp and fish. So they took their Subaru. Well, it was his Subaru. He picked her up for, I think it was planned to be a one-night trip. They brought their little tent and supplies. They brought their fishing supplies. They brought sacks of lunch. And they were just ready to go. It was an early October day, so the weather was pretty nice and crisp. The leaves were colored, and it was just a beautiful day. And there was this river where they wanted to try fishing at. He went fishing a lot as a boy with his dad. He wasn't all that familiar with it in his later years, but nonetheless, he wanted to try it with his new girlfriend. So they get out of the car and they grab their bags, their fishing poles. She's just dressed in this beautiful little dress, this little sundress. It was white with little hearts on it. It went probably a bit above her knees so that she could wade through the water. And she wasn't very heavily dressed at all. She had this nice blonde hair, this very pale white skin, some freckles, a few imperfections in her skin, but she was quite young. I think she had some acne. All this are details as to how they ended up identifying the body. But nonetheless, they packed their goodies and they went out down some trail in Manistee. It's just beautiful spruce trees, little chipmunks, little red squirrels. I think they took notice to a pileated woodpecker, which were commonly spotted in that area. Just beautiful birds. But it was supposed to be a good day for this couple. And of course, in the parking lot, there were some signs. Beware of the bears. Don't feed the bears. And to put your supplies up in a tree while camping. Now, I don't know if they took heed to these warnings, but Brian had a pocket knife on him, probably to do with fishing, and he had a long fishing pole. So they went up to the shoreline, they set their poles, and Alexia decided to go down the bank. And the river curved around, and there was a bunch of trees, and she kind of escaped Brian's visibility by going around that bend. And she stayed there for a little while, and Brian actually started going the other way because he was having some luck with walleye. The birds, the squirrels, the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves. It was a beautiful day. But something happened. Alexia vanished. Brian called for her. Alexia! Alexia! To nothing. The chirping of the birds ceased. You could just hear the ripples in the water. And nothing much beyond that. So Brian set down one of his poles, and he had another one in his backpack. So he brought his backpack with him. He held on to his pole, and he started searching down the riverbank, looking for this woman who was supposed to have her whole freaking life ahead of her. Alexia! Nothing. Where are you? Alexia! Nothing. So he started making his way down the river bend, and he saw some footprints in the mud, probably where Alexia was waiting with her pole, and then got back up onto the land. And he noticed the grass was all lied down on its side, leading out into the woods. I would imagine at this point, chills went down his frickin' spine. Hair began standing up on his back and neck. And the young man had no choice but to pursue it. Now, this attack happened in the mid-2000s. Cell phones were around, but service was pretty spotty, especially out in the woods, and especially in that area in Michigan. I actually remember going out there when I was a kid. Probably not long before this attack happened. So Brian started venturing through the woods here, just being cautious, just looking around, just yelling for Alexia to no avail. And suddenly he saw something in the distance, this black figure, just sort of, it was like it floated across and vanished behind the trees. It was so stealthy, but so large, but so quiet. It was just such a shock. That's how these things generally are. That's why you got to really be careful if you're out in bear country. Always be on the lookout, have bells hanging on you or something. Just make noise so you don't surprise them, because you won't even know that they're there until they're right behind you. It's just crazy how stealthy these things are with how big they are. Their feet are very padded, and they're very agile with how they walk, and very quiet and silent, like freaking phantoms of the night. So Brian noticed this figure move, and he didn't know where the hell it went. So he started looking around in the region in which he saw it, and he couldn't help but notice what seemed to be Alexia's white dress, just sort of lying flat on the ground. And there was a bunch of brush and weeds and stuff, so it wasn't all that visible, but he couldn't help but speculate that it was her. So he yelled again after seeing this carcass, Alexia! And nothing. Then he saw or heard a sort of gesture of her, and then she sort of moved her arm a little bit. And of course, this caused Brian to rush over there. And what he saw was just horrifying. He saw this girl, and just the contrast of these gaping wounds across her skin and chest, and her dress just torn and just festering up where the wounds were. Her face was scathed, and half of it was buried into the mud, and her dress was all ripped up. It was just, what a disgusting scene. And this girl was still alive. So Brian set down his pole, and he embraced this woman. I don't know. I assume he was trying to resuscitate her in some way. But of course, this can be a very dangerous thing to do with a possessive animal like a black bear, because what ended up happening was the bear ended up curving back around, and it startled Brian, where he took notice to the animal right to his side. And by that point, the bear was up on its hind legs and swatted Brian onto the ground. So Brian falls onto the ground. He grabs his fishing pole. He takes a roll. He stands back up. This bear crashes back down onto Alexia, just staring at Brian, towering over this young woman, and just snarls and hisses and kind of approaches him a little bit and just swats at him, just trying to keep him out of the way. I've noticed this in various YouTube videos and just through my bit of research that I've done on bears in the wild and in the zoo, how they can be very possessive over the prey that they possess. And that's exactly what was going on here. Now, Brian, he could have run away at this point. I mean, yeah, he would have been looked at as a coward. And let me know in the comments, what do you think you would have done in this scenario? I mean, his girl was close to death. She wasn't quite dead, but I mean, she might have been as good as dead, according to his perspective, but I don't blame the guy for what he did. So he grabs his pole and he just starts whoosh, 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 just swishing the thing across the wind, just cutting the wind with it, just trying to startle the damn creature. And the bear, of course, sees this pole going back and forth, and it starts getting a bit startled by it, and it stands up on its hind legs again and bellows out. Roar, you know, just a big nasty roar, just all a bunch of spit and saliva just coming out of its mouth, and it crashes back down on his four legs. But Brian was going to have none of it. So he started approaching the bear, just swinging his pole. Alexia, she's just sort of over on the ground, just hunched over, her face half buried into the dirt. I hate to say it, but I think she was unconscious in this moment. She was getting there, you know. She lost a lot of blood, and the bear, it drug her by her skull over to where she was. Its fang punctured into her eye socket, and her skull was cracked from the force of this thing. So it held her by her head and just sort of walked her into the woods. What a disgusting scene this was. So Brian starts swatting at the damn thing with a pole, just whoosh, whoosh, swat, just right on the face. Swat, 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 just swatting the damn bear. And the bear, of course, I mean, the pole's not going to do much for her. He's trying to just get the bear away from the chick. But this causes the bear to bull rush him, and it rushes into him, boom, and takes him on into the ground and just starts cutting into him, just digging into his chest. And Brian's sitting there trying to protect himself, putting his hands over his head. But the bear, it's so powerful, it just rips his arms out of the way and just starts tearing into this man. Now, I don't know exactly how it went from there, but it ended up breaking Brian's neck. I think he was on the ground, and it pried his arms away. A bear, its forearms and claws are just so strong. You really can't compete with it. They say that it feels like wood when you're in a combat scenario with a bear. Like you're fighting something that's made of just dense, heavy wood. And you can't break its grasp. You can't pry it off of you. It's just so strong. And this even applies to black bears, with even how on average, I think the males are 300 to 400 pounds. So not very heavy, but some of them get to 500, 600, 700 pounds. This one I think was 250 or so. So it wasn't huge, but it doesn't even matter. A 250 pound black bear could easily take out a 400-pound man. It just doesn't matter. These things are made and designed to shred, tear, kill, and destroy, to dig into the ground. I mean, these are predatory animals. But it ripped his grip apart, his protective stance. It ripped it apart, and somehow it wrapped its jaws around his neck and ended up breaking his neck. And the guy was paralyzed. So it ended up, I mean, I just don't want to say it, but their bodies were found in the same cache It ended up dragging them away, eating the girl more. It pissed and shit all over the cache, is what these things have a tendency of doing. That's how they market to keep other predators away. It sort of encompasses the smell of the carcass to where it just makes it smell like feces or whatever. Or it's also how it marks its territory so other bears know not to go mess with it. But it kicked dirt all over them. It buried them half into the ground. Their bodies were mangled together. And that's just how this incident played out. It's just horrific. And I know that a couple days later, their carcasses were found and the bear was tracked down and shot. But at that point, what was done was done. But I just remember hearing about these stories and just being terrified of going out into the woods. And I remember back when I was a kid, I actually went to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan with my dad and my uncle. And I got ahead of them down the trail. I went running way down the trail. And I heard a baby bear crying for its mom. So I turned back around. I was so far up ahead, I couldn't even see my dad and uncle. I was a little boy. I was like 8 years old. And just the chills that went down my spine, just knowing that Mama Bear was probably watching me. And who knows what the hell could have happened then. But fortunately, I made it out of there okay. But if you guys will, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this bear attack story? Brian and Alexia. Yeah, what a thing. I just wouldn't go out there without protection. And I carry protection in the town. So... legally, and so I can't imagine going out into bear country without it. But if you guys will like this video, subscribe to the page, paw the bell so you're notified next time I post a video. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this story, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace be with you.